What's up, everyone? I just needed to tell you this story, man. It gets me every time. I was working 80 hours a week at this company near Boyertown, right? This refrigerated warehouse, and I was loyal. I worked more hours at that company per week than any other employee in the entire building, and that is like not me puffing my chest, man. That is backed up by proof in the paperwork. There's records. I was so loyal, and I was so underpaid, right, and so unappreciated. But I never was gonna quit, man. It would have taken an act of God, right, to make me leave that place. Thank God, God was looking out, right? Because one day, right after COVID 19 had, COVID 19 had us doing $30,000 worth of cakes a day, right? We were doing like $20,000 to $30,000 worth of Bake Me a Wish cakes a day, right? COVID 19 was good business for them. They made hell of a lot of money because you know why? Everybody was ordering cakes because they're like, I ain't going to visit that family gut person. They might have that COVID stuff. So, everybody was stuck in their house, right? So they were ordering cakes and pies and all that. Like, sorry, we can't come to your party, but take this $100 Bake Me a Wish cake. It says gourmet, but it's really trash. I swear, man, Bake Me a Wish is not a place you want to get a cake from. They literally charge like $100, right, for this cake, and use the cheapest bakery that they can find. And like, as time went on, you would think like they would have got better. No, as time went on, they found cheaper and cheaper bakeries and like, charged more and more for the product. I can tell you that for a fact. But this is a refrigerated warehouse that I worked at. They had other accounts. It wasn't just Bake Me a Wish, but the main thing I did was the Bake Me a Wish, because of the fact that they had that many cakes coming in, because of COVID 19. I was promoted to a position that did not exist prior to this, but because COVID 19 was causing such a feeding frenzy on stuff that was coming in, right? They needed somebody. If you're getting $20,000 to $30,000 worth of cakes in a day, you need somebody down there organizing the freezer, getting that stuff together, and taking inventory, right? So I naturally ended up taking over this. First off, something about me is that there's almost never been a job where I've been hired to as a temp or whatever where they haven't offered to take me on full time afterwards, and that's the truth. At the company I was at before that, they had like 100 some people, and at the end of the season, it was flags, and at the end of the season, of course, I had the job. Yeah, man, that surprised me too. I'm actually a hard worker, but anyway, COVID 19 was crazy. They gave me a promotion, but they didn't actually give me the money for the promotion. And everything that company gave me, I had to fight to get. Right? Like I was like, oh, like if I'm not on the, if I'm not, I remember, we were we were doing so many cakes, right? And I'm like, yo, if I'm not on the books by Monday, you can find somebody else because I'm tired of getting paid like a temp. And you got me ordering all the temps around. You know what I mean? Like I'm fixing machines that nobody else knows how to fix, right? Anyway, getting off on a tangent here. So of course, I got hired onto the books at the company. Because they always hire me on. And now I'm sounding like I'm gonna probably have to cut that part out. Anyway, I got hired at Allentown Refrigerated Terminals as an employee, right? And I was one of their most faithful employees because I'm like, they didn't have to give me the job. They knew I had been in rehab before they gave me the job, and so I was loyal. And I shouldn't have been, right? Because of that, they held it over my head, and I didn't get paid anything, right? But I was doing all the work. I was working more hours at that company on the books than any other employee in that building, and that's a fact. That's like a fact on record. You could go back today if they still have records of their payroll and look it up. Like, there's no other employee in that building who worked the amount of hours I did. I had a key to open the place. I had a key to close the place, right? So it was the way they treated me that day was like I didn't see it coming, and it destroyed me on a level that emotionally that I don't even like to talk about. But it was the first slow day after COVID 19 had slowed down, right? So we were doing like $30,000 worth of cakes a day, and finally, right, it got slow, right? Like finally, like everyone like realized COVID wasn't that big a deal, and like like all right, maybe we don't want to spend $100 on a shitty cake today, right? So we finally got like some time where it was like not that busy, and we weren't doing $30,000 worth of cakes a day. I still got there at 3 a.m., right? Because that's what every day I worked at that company. I was the first one in, or one of the first people in. It was usually me and my buddy Jeff. We would show up together, and so my car broke down the day prior to this. It was the transponder chip key had like I went to go start my Murano, and I went to go start it up, and like the key broke, and the chip fell out, and I didn't know what it looked like. I called a mobile locksmith, and he was like explaining to me that if you can find this chip for your car before I come out in the afternoon, you're gonna save $200, right? So I looked in the morning at 3 a.m. when I got there. It was still dark. I couldn't find it, right? So I'm like, all right, whatever. I'll go on my break later and look again. So I waited until around I was anyway. I'm driving forklifts. I'm riding with the manager. It's like 3:30, 4, whatever. I guess 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning. I go into the freezer, and I should have had a key that turned off the blowers, right? But the maintenance guy got mad at some other temps for not turning the fans back on. So he took it upon himself to put a lock on these blowers, and he shouldn't have done that, right? I should have been able to flip a switch and go in there and clean the upper deck, without being in front of jet turbines that, blow freezing cold air to keep Omaha steaks cold. This was a refrigerated terminal, and that's how cold it was in there. Like, this was the upper deck of a deep freezer that blew air so cold it kept Omaha steaks frozen. Right, that was another account that they had. So anyway, I'm in there from like 3:30, 4 in the morning, right? And it was like the first slow day that we had. So I'm like, yo, it looked like a bomb went off on this upper deck. I'm like, I'm gonna organize this. I just got promoted. The refrigerator's my responsibility. I'm gonna get this area cleaned up, right? So I spent like from 3:30 until like 10:30 chipping ice, moving pallets, and I said, oh shit, it's like almost noon. I better run out and look for that transponder chip key before the mobile locksmith calls, right? So I run out to the car, and it's the hottest day of the year in July. I'm like, oh shit, right? I hop in, I start to look for it. I knew I made a mistake immediately, right? I started to feel dizzy. I went to get out, and before I could, it's just next thing you know, I'm looking up into the sky, right? And it's blinking like a heart monitor would blink, right? And all of a sudden the ground opens up underneath me, and I feel myself being sucked down the straw. And I'm like, I knew that if I let myself get sucked down the straw, I was dead. There's nothing I could do. And I tried with all my might not to get sucked down the straw. There's next thing you know, it sucked me under and swallowed up over top of me. Boop. The sky blinked one time. I was dead. I was gone, right? Then it was like the end of Pink Floyd, The Wall. I don't know what the hell happened, but I'm riding a missile, right? I'm on top of a rocket. Boom! And next thing you know, the closest witness said it looked like I had a seizure when I went to get out of the Murano. I flopped around on like a dead fish on the ground. He said, but before anybody could reach me, they heard a loud scream, and I leapt off of my back. I was landing there looking like I was dead. I landed on my feet, and I was at a full run to the road, right? Looking back, seeing us on the streets, I look back, and all I see is concerned coworkers, right? And, they're looking at me. I was like covered in mud and blood. I didn't know what happened, And because of that, I got fired.